I want to start with a question, and I want you to actually answer it, not just nod along at the idea of answering it. If your spouse died tomorrow, what would your Social Security income be the following month? Not the 2 checks added together, the 1 check that would still be arriving. Do you know that number? Most couples don't. They've looked hard at what Social Security looks like with both of them alive and both checks coming in. And after 23 years of doing this work, I can tell you plainly, the claiming decisions you make about 3 years out are what set the answer to that question, and they set it for decades. That's what year 3 is all about. Year 3 has 2 jobs: Social Security, solved as a household, not as 2 separate people, and sequence of returns risk, the most underrated financial threat in early retirement. Both of them get decided before you retire. Neither one can be patched up after the fact. Let's get into it. I'm Will Hoffman, founder and president of Hoffman Wealth Management, and this is Pre-Retirement Navigated. The whole show lives inside one stretch of time, the 5 years right before you stop working. In each episode, we take a single piece of that stretch and go all the way in using our navigation formula. In year 5, you poured the foundation: the retirement date, the honest budget, the savings, the risk calibration. In year 4, you built the tax strategy, the income timeline, and the tax control triangle. We talked about Roth conversions. Year 3 is the defense year. The foundation is set, the tax plan is in motion, and now the job is to protect all of it. 3 years out is exactly the right moment for this type of work. You've got enough runway to model every scenario, enough time to stress test the Social Security strategy, and enough lead time to build the cash reserve income plan depends on. Leave it until year 1 and your choices get much more narrow. Leave it until you're already retired and some of them have simply closed. Let me start with Social Security and with a specific mistake I watch couples make over and over. They break it into 2 separate problems: his benefit, her benefit. When does he file? When does she file? And they tune each one on its own. That's the wrong frame entirely. For a married couple, Social Security is a single household decision, and there are 3 scenarios you have to hold up at the same time. Scenario 1 is the easy one everybody already looks at: the combined income while you're both alive and both collecting. Scenario 2, the income after the higher earner passes: which check ends, which one continues, and at what size. In scenario 3, the income after the lower earner passes. Most couples have never once run scenarios 2 and 3, and those are frequently the scenarios that decide whether whoever's left is comfortable or stretched for the rest of their life. Here's the mechanism that makes it bite. When one spouse dies, one of the 2 checks simply stops. The smaller of the 2 ends, and the survivor keeps the larger. So household income takes a step down that's close to half in a single month. And here's the part that ambushes people: the life those 2 checks were funding doesn't shrink to match. A house doesn't get cheaper to keep because one person is living in it instead of 2. The property taxes don't read the obituary. The insurance, the upkeep, the basic cost of keeping a roof overhead and the lights on, most of that just holds steady while the income falls off a ledge. That's the squeeze the surviving spouse walks straight into. And it's the exact squeeze a smart claiming strategy is built to soften. Something you either plan for now or leave to chance based entirely on what you decide in year 3. In 2026, the maximum Social Security benefit for someone who claims at age 62 is $2,969 a month. Wait until age 70, and that maximum jumps to $5,181 a month. It's a difference of $2,212 every single month for life. For the higher earner in a couple, that $2,212 gap doesn't just affect their income while they're alive. It becomes the survivor benefit, becomes the check their spouse lives on for potentially decades after they're gone. Claiming at 62 instead of 70 doesn't just shrink your benefit, permanently lowers the financial floor for whoever outlives you. And here's something people don't fully weigh about the timing math. Full retirement age to age 70 bumps your benefit up by 8% a year. Guaranteed, inflation adjusted, for life. That's not an investment return you're hoping for. It's a permanent raise to a government-backed income stream that pays out as long as either of you is alive. For most couples in decent health, that's a hard trade to argue against. The break-even math is straightforward. Delay from 62 to 70 and you give up 8 years of payments, but your monthly benefit runs roughly 77% higher at 70 than 62. Based on Social Security Administration actuarial data, the break-even point for claiming at 70 versus 62 lands around age 80 to 82. A woman, about 85. For a couple, the odds at least one of them lives past the break-even age is high, which is why for most two-earner couples, the higher earner delaying to 70 is one of the highest value financial moves in this entire series. How do you actually coordinate two claims? Start from the fact we just nailed down. After the first death, the survivor lives on the larger of the two checks. That one fact does most of the heavy lifting here. It means the higher earner's benefit isn't really just their benefit, it's the household's income floor for the back half of retirement. The number one person may be living on alone for 20 years. You protect a number that important by letting it grow for as long as you possibly can, and for the higher earner, that usually means pushing the claim toward 70. The other check is the flexible one. The lower earner often has room to claim earlier, sometimes as early as 62, to start a guaranteed income flowing into the household while the important benefit keeps climbing in the background. So, the two checks are really doing two different jobs. One is built to be as large and permanent as possible because someone may lean on it alone someday. The other is there to bridge the gap in the meantime. Once you stop seeing them as two versions of the same decision and start seeing them as two different assignments, the coordination mostly designs itself. None of this is a law of physics. Health, a real age gap, a lopsided earnings history, any of those can point the math somewhere else, and you run it for your own situation. But the core principle holds for most couples. The higher earner delaying deserves a serious model because the person who pays for an early claim is the survivor, and that survivor could be living on the smaller check for 2 decades. So don't make this call in isolation, and don't make it the week before you retire. Make it in year 3, while you've got the runway to run every scenario. Stress test the numbers, and build the bridge income a delayed claim requires. We're gonna have a full dedicated episode on Social Security for couples that goes deep on all of it. The survivor math, the coordination, the longevity data. This is just the overview. Now let me pivot to the second big threat in year 3. This one has a name most people have never heard, unfortunately until they're living inside of it. It's called sequence of returns risk, and I'd argue it's the most underestimated danger in all of early retirement. Here's the idea. While you're accumulating, which is steadily adding money to a portfolio, the order your returns show up barely matters. A rough year early, then good years land you in roughly the same place as good years followed by a rough one. When money is flowing in, the sequence is nearly irrelevant. But when you flip that to withdrawing, pulling money out to live on, and the order suddenly matters enormously. If the market drops hard in year 1 or year 2 of retirement while you're drawing income, you're selling shares at beaten down prices to fund your life. Those shares are gone. They can't be part of a recovery because they're no longer in the account. That permanent dent in your asset base then compounds forward in a way that can quietly break an otherwise sound plan, even if the market eventually roars back. Research by Wade Pfau has put a number on this. The compounded return in the first 10 years of retirement accounts for roughly 77% of the final outcome. Two retirees with identical portfolios, identical withdrawal rates, and identical 30-year average returns can land in completely different places purely based on whether the bad years hit early or late. Negative returns do more damage early in retirement than later, per a 2024 Fidelity Investments report, because the retiree misses more years of compounding. It's the sequence that decides it, not just the average. Here's how dramatic it gets. Picture two retirees with $2 million in the same 5% average annual return over 20 years. Both pull out $80,000 a year. On paper, they should finish in the same spot, but they don't. The one whose bad years landed first ends up roughly $700,000 poorer and potentially running out of money. The one whose good years came first finishes with $2.4 million. Same portfolio, same withdrawals, same average return, different order. That's sequence of returns risk. And it's why the opening years of retirement are the single most financially vulnerable stretch of the whole journey. So, how do you defend against it? The tool I lean on hardest with clients is almost boringly simple: a cash reserve that lives completely outside of the portfolio. Markets fall, you spend from the reserve instead of selling investments while they're down. The portfolio is left alone to heal. And if the recovery comes, your shares are still there to ride it back up. You never cemented the loss by selling into it. Now, here's where nearly everyone oversizes this thing and quietly costs themselves money. They hear 3 years of reserve and they picture 3 years of their entire spending sitting in cash. That's the wrong number, and it's badly too big. The reserve was never meant to cover your whole life, only the slice your guaranteed income doesn't already cover on its own. Social Security, a pension, anything that shows up every month regardless of what the market did, that's already carrying a big share of your spending, downturn or not. The reserve is only on the hook for what's left after that. Say your guaranteed income already handles 2/3 of your monthly spending, then the reserve gets sized against the remaining third, not the whole thing. For most households, that leftover slice is a fraction of the total, which means the cash pile you actually need is far smaller and far less of a drag on your returns than the one people scare themselves into holding. Size it to the shortfall, not the lifestyle. And keep it somewhere liquid and dull. A high yield savings account, a money market, its job is not to grow. Its job is to be sitting right there with total certainty on the worst market morning of your retirement. That certainty is the entire point of holding it. 2 last moves before we close out year 3. Quit treating your retirement income as a string of withdrawals and start engineering it as a system. That sounds like a word game, but it isn't. When your income comes from reaching into an investment account whenever you happen to need cash, every single month quietly hands you a corrosive little question: is now a good time to sell? That question is where bad decisions are born. You hesitate in a downturn, you second guess, you react. A scheduled transfer that lands in your checking account on the same day every month, the way a paycheck used to, simply deletes that question. You spent a long time building something worth protecting. This is the year you make sure a single bad year in the market or in life can't undo it. Get Social Security right as a household, build the reserve, engineer the income. Know where your plan bends, and that's the work. If today put a question mark next to your Social Security strategy, which scenario you've actually modeled, what the survivor picture looks like, whether the higher earner delaying makes sense for your household, or next to how your portfolio is positioned against sequence risk, here are 2 ways you can take the next step. First, grab our free retirement readiness checklist. It's the same framework we open every client relationship with. It'll lay out where you stand across all 5 years, what's handled, what's still loose, and what deserves your attention first. The link is right under this video in the show notes. Second, you can book a no-cost discovery call with our office. This is not a sales pitch. It's a real conversation about your actual numbers, your Social Security scenarios, your sequence risk exposure, your cash reserve, and an honest read on whether we're the right people to work through it with you. No pressure, and there's nothing owed. That link is just under the checklist in the show notes below. I'm Will Hoffman. This is Pre-Retirement Navigated, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's episode.